We're back on the Big Talker FM, the Mornings Without Joe Catanacci show. I'm Andrew Donaldson filling in, TK Turbo producing, and trying to keep everything between the rails behind it. Appreciate him. Have you all been following this Gabby Petito story? It's kind of hard to get away from, but something really interesting has happened here besides just, the horrible tragedy of a young woman being killed. There's obviously some domestic violence issues here. There's a massive manhunt for this Brian Laundrie feller who's not appears to be guilty, but we'll have to find out how the case goes out. He's on the run. His family has clearly helped him on the run. But that's one part of this story. Something really interesting happened when this story broke. When the story first started, it was the family like always, and then the family was trying to get awareness on it, and then it went viral, and then there was some circumstances that got it into the national media, and then it broke on the national media, and it went everywhere. But then there was a backlash against the national media because people were like, well, what about all these other missing people that aren't bloggers and aren't famous online and folks that aren't, pretty young blonde girls and white girls and these sorts of things. And they brought other issues into it. And then something really interesting happened that was probably pretty predictable for those of us that do a little bit of media. That same day and that evening and the next morning, every single news media outlet started running stories about Gabby Petito gets attention, but what about all these other people? Now, what was that? Media has a reactionary component to it, especially broadcast media. And I'm guilty about it. I say media. I shouldn't say media because it's too broad a term. News broadcast media is a super focused thing. They have to hit trends. They have a very specific business model. They chase a certain demographic because they're buying advertising, and their ratings dictate how much they charge for their advertising. So they felt the pressure of people saying, what about everybody else? And then they all started running stories about what about all these other people? I had a wonderful conversation for the podcast I host called Heard Tell. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. Just put in Heard Tell and or my name, Andrew Donaldson, should come right up for you. And I got to talk to investigative journalist Molly McCluskey, who several years ago did a story on missing persons. And she just laid it out like these same outlets are saying, well, what about all these other people? Turn down these stories when they're not viral. It is very important for us as consumers, as media consumers, to know what our media is doing and understand why they are doing it. And it's important for us to follow people like the folks Joe brings on, like Joe's show here, independent media, and we can start and pick and choose not just outlets, but actual reporters, actual personalities, actual commentators who can bring us good information. There are reporters in the field who work and slave over these stories and do good work. And with the power that you have with social media and the power that we have with modern technology, our intake media-wise is completely up to us. We don't have to just take broadcast news or a major outlet's word for it. Anything they say, we have the power in our hands with our smartphones to Google it immediately and fact-check it ourselves. We need to be better consumers. And something like the Gabby Petito story is a great example. There was local media all over this story long before the national media broke on it. These other missing persons all over the country, and the story that Molly did was on the Crow Reservation out in Montana and the border of Wyoming. Indigenous peoples and native peoples that have disappeared, and because of the way the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the policing out there, there's some real gaps in government coverage and jurisdictions and how these things are investigated. There's some real issues with how the government has treated those people groups and those sorts of things, but there's reporters that deal with those things, and we can find them and go look for them. So I actually take it as a positive sign that there was a big backlash when the Gabby Petito story came out of the American public going, yeah, we agree that's a horrible thing, but we want to know about all these other ones too. The American people, we talk about sometimes media being bad, and it is, and the bad parts that go with mass media. But in this instance, we should take a piece of goodness out of this that, hey, the American people are smarter than the media gives them credit for. The audience is paying attention, and the audience does want good information if you'll provide it for them. And they have the ability now, and they, meaning us, the public, when we're just consuming media, we have the ability to push back on these things now, and not only just push back to make noise, they're reacting to it. they have to react to it because to them it's a business first and news and journalism second. So if we push back on things, we get credit for those sort of things. So even inside of something as bad as the Gabby Petito story, the heartbeat of the American people is still underneath there. They have an ability to push back when they need to, and in this case they did. And if you go and dig just a little bit below the headlines, you'll notice there's been several missing person stories since then where they've either unfortunately recovered a body, but at least you get some closure, or they've get some attention on some of these other stories. And it came strictly from you folks because you pushed back on a media narrative, you didn't take it at face value, and you made noise on social media and other places, which is where a lot of our news comes from. One thing Molly said that really touched me, when you watch these news stories online, whether you're watching it on like a CNN or something, or you're reading it in an outlet like a Washington Post or a New York Times, always watch for when a story or the reporter or the presenter on TV says stories taken from, compiled from local reporting from such and such a reporter. We've gotten this story from so-and-so. And then ask yourself, wait a minute, why am I going through this aggregate source? Why don't I go to that actual reporter and see what they're reporting on themselves and give them the traffic and give them the attention? All they're doing is repeating something somebody else said. You can go do that yourself, and your media intake will be better for it. You'll probably be happier and healthier for it, and you get to cut through all the noise, start turning down the noise on the media noise machine and the news cycle, and get to the information that we can actually apply to our life and that makes things better, and we can go forward on it.